On his Matt Mosley, the Matt Mosley Show, and man, we're excited to be joined by Grayson Grundhoefer. I mean, he's coming right into your screen there, Scotty. He may be looking at those caps you like so much. It almost has a bit of a Hondo look to it there. Some good lettering there. Sorry, Grayson, I've aged into the deal where I've got several different glasses that I have to put on. But thank you for doing this, man. It's been a while. It's fun to be able to get to visit with you. How was your bye week? The week before, you were balancing Baylor coverage with a major wedding in your family, and then you had the bye week. Were you able to get recharged? Did you do some good bye week work? What was your bye week like?
Man, my bye week was busy. I was in Scotland actually because my brother-in-law got married there. So with just 7 other people in the family. So it was a quick trip, quick turnaround, long flight. So all of that, but it went really well. And so, during that time period, watched a lot of football. Honestly, I went back and watched just about every Baylor game. I didn't watch the Samford game just because I wanted to erase that from my mind a little bit. But I've gone through and kind of watched some of the other games, and obviously watched the Big 12 because that's kind of where we're at right now, right? Trying to figure out, who these Big 12 teams are, what they're about, what Baylor's about, what are the things that Baylor can do that these other teams can't do, what are the teams that these teams do that Baylor can't do, and I think that's been kind of an encouraging and discouraging thing, just kind of looking through their schedule and some of the challenges that are coming up, including this weekend against TCU, who's coming off of a very rough performance against Kansas State.
I like that. You were watching cut-ups and watching old games while like on a train to Inverness or headed to the Isle of Skye. That's my homeland, by the way. So I love it in Scotland. And I don't know if I even have any proof of that, but it felt like my homeland when I was over there. Where was the wedding in Scotland, and what were the accommodations? Was it pretty? Were you like in some very old, stone field? What was the place like?
Yeah, so it was it started in Edinburgh. That's where we started the trip and did some of the stuff there. And that was fun. Went to a castle and did that whole tour where movies have been shot, including Harry Potter and a few others. So that was pretty cool. And then we drove up to Pitlochry. And in Pitlochry, that's where we this small town, that's where they got married in this national park over there. So there were only 7 of us there. So it was really, cool family time, and it was great, man. The environment there, just the grass is greener, the mountains are awesome, the hills are great, the trees changing colors. Like it was really cool to see for sure.
Okay, so I've stayed in Pitlochry. Not that we're going to turn this into a travel blog or something, but yes, I've stayed there. I could almost remember the bed and breakfast. I remember the people, what do they call that? Lawn bowling or whatever. They were playing all that stuff right down the street. And then we played a course there in Pitlochry. And it might have been the one that there was a females only course. Over in the States, it's male only. This was a female only. We could play it, but the men were not allowed in the clubhouse. So, which is kind of nice for once, because it used to be kind of the other way around. So, but there were like ancient ruins on the golf course. So yes, Pitlochry. That's awesome, man.
It was not something I expected at all. Like we scheduled this 2 months ago. So it was quick turnaround for sure.
Your studies of this team during the bye, what were your couple of biggest takeaways? And it certainly seems like obviously defense is where they got to get it turned around. And, you found areas like where they have pressure, but obviously they don't have the sack totals. So they're doing maybe some things right and then not being able to finish those plays. Was there anything that surprised you when you kind of look back and you were trying to get a handle on where the Bears are? Did anything surprise you? Did you come away more encouraged or more discouraged?
So one stat that I don't think it surprised me, but it was definitely something that I think would surprise most people. So I think common knowledge is, Baylor's offense has been good, and it has been. You look at any metric, Baylor is a top 25 offense. I think FE Plus has them at like 14. I think that's the highest they're ranked. I think pretty squarely they're a top 25 offense. But the area that they have not been good, and the area that I think has impacted this team negatively from an offensive standpoint, is they have not done a good job at playing complementary football. Baylor has 9 combined 3-and-outs / turnovers, and Baylor only has 14 points off of those. That's a tough stat to get past. And that's a stat where it's like, yeah, your defense isn't very good, but they really need the offense to go out there and score points after they get a 3-and-out or after they get a turnover. That's how you play complementary football. That's how you help make the defense better. So again, that was just something that really stood out to me, because it's like something that I've been feeling, and I think Baylor fans have been feeling it too, as to maybe this next level that Baylor's offense could get to. I think that was a big one for me, because you anticipate that the defense was bad. And I think we all know the defense has struggled. But I think pointing to something where the offense could take a step forward is equally as important, honestly.
That's interesting. And obviously, Trig just continuing. I mean, I saw some of the things you were talking about in your chat with fans, and there's things that Baylor needs to build on. Hopefully they get healthy. Bryson was banged up in that last game. I found one interesting thing you said. You were talking about Carl, and everybody's waited for him all year, and now he finally played, and then he stopped. He wasn't playing. And it's like other players are playing through injuries. I think you had a comment kind of like, well, they have to wait until he's truly 100%. He continues to go. Like, I've wondered if you just get to the point where you're just like, you just don't expect anything from him this season. Is that the attitude, do you feel like, of anybody from this staff? Or are there people who still think, hey, we can get something from him this season, knowing the context of how much they need him and how much they need help in the back end with some of the injuries and some of the inexperience they have?
It's kind of been an interesting question, because you've also looked around, you've seen Jacob Redding emerge, and you've seen DJ Coleman emerge at star. And it's kind of like, where would he fit in when he comes back even? And the expectation here was that he was going to be a starter for them. Like, he was going to be a difference maker for them. And he just, he's gotten hurt, and he's been dealing with this knee issue. And now I think we're at a point where they're not going to rush him back. They're not going to play him unless he's 100%. I think that's kind of the smart move, right? Because you don't want him to lose confidence. You don't want him to get hurt again, right? I mean, all of those things play a part in it. I still think he can help them. And because of that, if he does get to 100%, I do think you find a role for him. I don't know what that would be. I don't know if he takes over the starting role at field safety, even though Redding's played well there. I don't know if he takes over the star position over DJ Coleman. I kind of don't think that would be the case. I think DJ's played well enough to kind of cement himself as the starter there, but I do think he could play a role and be a factor. And this was a guy who had a lot of upside. They had a lot of expectations for him, and he just hasn't been healthy. So I think they're going to wait till he's 100%. When that happens, could it be next week after this, bye week and after the TCU game? Could it be after their second bye week here coming up at the beginning of November? Could it be at the end of the year? We'll see. But I think it's a waiting game right now for him.
Who in your mind is Baylor's best pass rusher? You've waited for someone to emerge when Jackie got healthy. Obviously, he's maybe your best so-called game wrecker, the ability to get some penetration. But there have been so many opportunities. You've had players get hurt. That could have been part of the mix. But you alluded to 2021 when guys were just making huge plays and they were getting takeaways. And right now, boy, they're not good in the takeaway game. I don't know what you probably have it off the top of your head. They're minus, what are they? It's not.
4. I think it's -4.
Are they for the season? That's a little better, honestly, than I thought. They were in pretty bad shape, so I guess they've gotten a couple more. But is there anybody that's maybe like you alluded to in one of your things on Sickle 365 that's getting some pressure and just not finishing? Or like when you think of, okay, where is the pressure need to come from? Who are the candidates even? Because it's just like it's nobody's getting it done as far as sacks, and obviously sacks lead to takeaways.
I mean, certainly you need Jackie Marshall, Cooper Lands, those guys to be better. They're not necessarily who you think of as great pass rushers. I think they're really good players who have a skill set to get after the quarterback. But I would say that, man, it's been one of those situations where Baylor's had to run a very different defense this year. They're running more peso, which means they got 2 jacks on the field. And that means you're putting Jackie Marshall and Cooper Lands at defensive tackle again. And so therefore, they're not in the same situations to get sacked. So the guys that you look at right now, Matthew Fobbs-White is the big one. He's gotten a lot of pressures. I think he's in the top 5 in pressures in the Big 12. Not getting sacks, not finishing plays, over pursuing. Like, he has got to finish plays. And if he does, I think he's a prime candidate to take that step forward. Amarian Winston has shown some flashes as well. You'd like to see Keaton Thomas blitz more because really, and truthfully, Baylor has had a lot more success when linebackers have gotten those sacks, right? Dave Aranda is known for that. But they haven't been able to blitz a guy like Keaton Thomas because I don't know that Kylan Reed can hold up in coverage. And so you're blitzing Kylan Reed, and he hasn't been as productive. So maybe they turn to a guy like Caleb Burns to give them a more pressure package. When he comes in, he was a 4-star freshman this year. Maybe you blitz DJ Coleman and Kendrick Simpkins more from the star position. Maybe they add some versatility there. These are all potential options, but I think at the end of the day, the 2 that you point to really are Matthew Fobbs-White at the top, and then probably Amarian Winston as your second, especially since they're playing those 2 guys together so much.
All right, and I kind of want to see where you are on Hoover, Josh Hoover. He's put up some great numbers over the years. They are capable, and I saw him a couple of weeks ago when their star receiver was down that week. He was kind of banged up in that game. He just didn't give him much. When he's on, he's really, really good. And yet I don't know why TCU, for years, they had very talented running backs. And I thought going into this year, maybe they had solved that a little bit. They just don't run the ball very well. Baylor's had moments where they don't run the ball very well. Is that a lack of personnel, injuries? When you kind of start taking a look and breaking down TCU, they continue not to run the ball well. And when does Hoover have issues, I guess, is the biggest question, because at times he is very, very accurate. And, again, if given too much time, he can slice and dice you.
The teams that have had success against Hoover, in my eyes, at least, are ones that can get after the quarterback while not having to blitz a ton of guys. And I know I think people all over our board are talking about putting pressure on Hoover and blitzing a bunch of guys. But really, you look at Arizona State, you look at Kansas State, they blitzed a little bit, but it was more so about, could they get home with 3, 4, 5 guys? Were they not having to bring 6, bring too many guys on the blitz, thus allowing you to drop more guys into coverage, right? And that's where Hoover has struggled, right? Is where you can get some pressure on him, but then also you're forcing him to throw against tough looks in the secondary. And I think a big challenge for TCU has been they can't run the football. So people don't really respect them enough to put 6 guys in the box. You're really just dealing with 5 guys in the box a lot. And so because of that, there's an extra defender back there in coverage. And, that's a challenge. That's a challenge for any offense when you're so one-dimensional that the defense is able to get creative with their coverages and make the looks a little bit more difficult for you, even with your really good receivers, which I do believe they have with Eric McAllister, Jordan Dwyer. Those are 2 really, really good players. Even Joseph Manjack's a good slot guy. But I think in general, they do need to get the run game going more with Kavorian Barnes. He's a good player. He transferred in from UTSA. He's been injured kind of off and on, but he played pretty well against K-State. He had 80 yards rushing, which is a lot better than what they've been getting from their running backs recently. But I think that challenge is big for TCU. The fact that they haven't ran the football, again, allows teams to drop guys back and make coverages a little more exotic for Hoover. And then he's just a quarterback who's prone to turn the ball over, as he's got this gunslinger mentality, thinks he can make every throw. At times that's really good. Other times it's really, really bad.
All right. Baylor has not always functioned well at this place in Fort Worth. And Grayson, you're now old enough to have been to some of these games. And I swore this place off. I am attending Saturday's game because I got to do some pregame work. And so I'm going to go up there. I don't like going over there for the most part because I just feel like even since I was a kid, there have been some negative experiences. But this is a this is a huge game for both teams, and it really does feel like the seasons, both their seasons, hinge on this. It's interesting to me to get to have Dave Aranda coming off the bye. You probably have in your head exactly what he's been coming off the bye. Some coaches better than others, but this is how do you? I mean, what does this game represent to you, other than the huge rivalry that it is? Doesn't it feel like for both teams, the whole conference record, the conference season, everything? Because I feel like some people, including they've basically handed Dave Campbell's Texas football has already handed the conference title to Tech, but some of us would like to see it played out. This just feels like so much writing on the line in terms of, and I guess it's that way every year. But for some reason, Grayson, since it's a lot earlier, a little bit earlier than we're used to, it does feel like one of those huge swing games.
It is. I think it's much bigger for Baylor, though, when it comes to, actual chances of winning the Big 12. I just look at TCU's schedule. I just don't think that they're capable of getting through that schedule without another loss, which would be their third conference loss. I'm pretty sure that the second place team's probably going to be 7-2 in Big 12 play. I don't see TCU getting to that regardless of if they beat Baylor or not. But for Baylor, it is possible. And I think the other big thing for Baylor is I look at the contenders, right? Tech is obviously one. I think they're going to be in the Big 12 championship at the end of the year. Their schedule is very favorable going forward, and they already have a win over Utah. But for Baylor, you get Cincinnati and you get Utah left on your schedule. And both of those teams, I think, are legitimate contenders to make the Big 12 championship this year, and you get to play them. And so if you take care of business, you could find yourself getting into November, getting into late in the season, and you're still in the conference title picture. And if you win those two games, you kind of got to be feeling okay about your chances. That's easier said than done. But I do believe that if Baylor goes in and beats TCU, the conversation is going to change a little bit around this Baylor team. Because right now, I think you look around at Big 12 people, who they're talking about, they're not talking about Baylor at all. And I understand it. The defense has been terrible. I get it. I get all the concerns. But I will also say that if they win this game, it sets up a huge matchup against Cincinnati, and the rest of their schedule, again, there is a path to them making the Big 12 championship. I don't necessarily see that path with TCU, regardless if they win this game.
Do you have a sense for what's going on with Ashton? It just seemed like, okay, it was discipline, whatever reason. He was barely involved in that one game, and he was on such a roll, and with Josh, and I mean the whole thing, and they've continued to put up big numbers, but it's weird to see a guy have that huge of an impact through 4 games of the season and then kind of fall off completely. Is there something you feel like there's something going on more than what we're seeing on the field that has that held up what was really seemingly a great connection between Sawyer and Ashton?
I mean, there was obviously, and that's why, he was held out. But I think now I think it's getting back on track. I also think it's something where they need Ashton to perform better. He's too good of a player to have, 2 drops like he had, I believe, against Kansas State. He's got to be a factor for this team to reach their ultimate goals. Now, the good news is, even when he's not playing at the level we know he can play at, they got guys like Kobe Prentice, Cole Wilson, Michael Trigg, Josh Cameron. I think it's also fair to point that out, right? That this ball is going to get dispersed kind of all over the place with Sawyer Robertson. So he's going to find the hot hand, find the guy who's making those plays. And it just hasn't been Ashton these past few games. That needs to turn, because I do think Ashton is a difference maker. I do think Ashton can be a guy that wins you a game. He can be your leading receiver in a game and really take over a game. We kind of saw that against SMU. Him and Josh Cameron took over that game. I do think there is they need him to play at that level, but I also think that sometimes you're going to get a 2 for 34 game from him, and then you're going to get a 6 for 80 from Cole Wilson and a 2 touchdown game from Kobe Prentice. Those things happen because of how they disperse the football. But I do think it's a pretty good observation by you on that, because I do think Ashton needs to perform at a higher level, and we know what he's capable of. And I think that will probably change going forward.
What will it take for Sawyer, who's putting up huge numbers? Did you see Mel Kiper put out his top 10? He put out his big board. of all the people he had to draft, but then they broke it down by position. And Sawyer was not in the top 10. Now, I've talked to scouts who really like him a lot. You've done the same. You've run it, but it's almost like the big names in the draft industry or whatever are waiting for someone else to do it or something, and of course they always play catch up. If at some point this season somebody runs out there, I feel like Todd McShay has been pretty complimentary and said some great things about Sawyer, but like, do you get a sense of like what people are still waiting to see from him? And maybe it's, I wouldn't have a big problem with people saying, let's see him get some more big wins or something like that. But in terms of the numbers he's putting up, there's really almost no one on that board in the top 10. There may be one or two that are putting up similar numbers to what Sawyer is. So I'm just wondering, like, is it Baylor for whatever reason? Is it, what's the holdup, do you feel like, on people getting their arms around Sawyer as a draft prospect?
I think it's a different conversation when we're talking about, where does he rank as far as quarterbacks in the conference or in the entire, college football landscape in college versus projecting to the NFL. Those are two just such different conversations. And it's like, man, the guy that won the national championship last year, Will Howard, went in the 6th round. Guys who put up huge numbers, Bryce Petty, Davis Webb, like we've seen these guys put up huge numbers and they still go late in the NFL draft. And so I think that's where it's kind of different. I think Sawyer is definitely one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Like, he is a top 10 quarterback in all of college football. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL draft. I do think he's going to get drafted. I do think he's an NFL quarterback. I don't necessarily know if he's a, first round pick. I think a lot of that's going to come down to how do the other quarterbacks in this class finish, right? Because it's been very disappointing. Like, they have not performed a lot of the top upper echelon guys. And so it's kind of caused a lot of people to look at those next guys on the list. And sometimes when that happens, guys sneak up a couple rounds. Maybe that's what happens with Sawyer by the time we get to actual NFL draft season. So again, I think he's going to get drafted, but I'm also not going to say he's a 2nd round pick. I can't go that high at this moment. We've seen so many good quarterbacks go in the 5th, 6th round, and they're still really awesome college quarterbacks. That just doesn't necessarily mean that they're, the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So I think it's to be determined still for Sawyer a little bit.
It might help if he would take off every now and then and remind people how fast he is, and use that facet of the game. It'll be interesting because I did not see in his top 10 running backs, Bryson did not appear in there as well. I know he hasn't had just an enormous year, but I mean, he's obviously, if not the best running back in the Big 12, one of the best 2 or 3. So it's weird that he's not showing up. So we'll see where all that goes. Hey, what's the best? A little out there question, but like this James Franklin thing made me start thinking about all this. Is the tech job right now with Joey, because of all the NIL money, does that automatically become the best coaching job in the Big 12? I mean, in some respects, you could argue the opposite of that, because then you have a huge target on you, right? Like, if you pour that much money in and Joey's only winning 7 or 8 games, he won't be there that long. If they're going to continue to funnel that much money in, like you say, it looks like he's going to have a great season this year. Does that automatically become the best coaching job in the Big 12 because of all that money? Or could you make an argument? I mean, like, for instance, Utah stayed with one guy for like 20 years. There does seem to be huge stability at a place like that. Arizona State has a great young coach. But that team has been very up and down this year. What would you say are the best 2 or 3 coaching jobs in the Big 12 right now?
It's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think it does hold some merit that, Texas Tech has a lot of money. They've put a lot of money into the program, and so therefore it's a very intriguing job. The question is, are you going to do that every single year?
Mm-hmm.
Do you do that year over year? And maybe they do. I mean, maybe that's what happens. And if that does happen, then yeah, that's a top 3 job in the conference, because you have the money, the resources. They just upgraded their facilities as well. I don't think the location is great, but again, if you have the money to get, to pay above asking price to get guys there, then it doesn't really matter. where it's located. So I think that Tech is probably in that conversation. I do think Baylor and TCU are also in that conversation. Being Texas schools, they're in a great location. Both have, in my eyes, competed well when it comes to recruiting and the transfer portal in the last year or two. You're seeing Baylor in the high school recruiting game do a much better job in last year's recruiting class, this year's recruiting class, and in the 2027 one. TCU's always done a good job of that. So I think those two are in the mix as well for being, kind of one of those top three. You mentioned Utah. I'm curious if that's more of a Kyle Whittingham thing, or if Morgan Scalley's going to be able to just keep the thing going, right? Is he going to be able to just keep it going no matter what? Is that job really going to be the same kind of job it has been with Kyle as it is with someone else? I don't necessarily know the answer to that. Same with Arizona State. Without Kenny Dillingham, they weren't winning much. So do they have the resources now that, they're going to be one of the top three jobs? I'm not really sure on that. I think that Utah probably has the best case when you're looking at some of the schools outside the state of Texas. But I do think, when you look at Tech, TCU, and Baylor, I think they are up there with the best jobs in the conference. And I think what they've done on the recruiting side of things really speaks to that.
Yeah. And I mean, BYU is not a bad job. If people stay there a long time, they're putting huge funding into it. I think you'd have to convert. Some of these guys would have to, I think most times they hire an LDS coach. So that would be kind of interesting. Okay. You brought up recruiting. Boy, y'all do a great job on all the premium boards. And I think Colt's let me back on there. So I've been monitoring all what y'all are doing, but you and Colt, Levi does such a good job. What's kind of out there, Grayson, with 2026? Are there a couple of battles, or are there things like what's coming up in the next few weeks that are big? And then 2027, like you said, it sounds like off to a good start in that area. I think the best thing is that Baylor has made keeping kids in Central Texas a huge priority. And I don't know why it took so long, but it's like once they did, and maybe they did try and just didn't do a good job of it. Every time I now go to an A&M game and I see Torian York, I can't help but think, oh my gosh, he committed to Baylor back in the day. And that's who you need, right? I mean, he is huge leader. He's everything you want in a player. And at one point, Baylor did zero in on him, and the Aggies probably, came with a little more money, if I had to guess. 2026 and 27, where are the Bears? And through all the winning and losing right now, does everybody seem pretty solid from the recruits that you talk to?
Right. That's kind of been the message that I don't think Baylor fans necessarily want to hear, but recruits are really liking what they've seen from Baylor so far. And yes, there are some guys in this class that are being recruited elsewhere. Jamarian Vincent took an official visit to Michigan. Like they have a really good class. Your guys are going to continue to get recruited, but Baylor's going out and recruiting guys as well and trying to figure out, how do they build on the class? They're really looking on the defensive line. A couple of guys kind of there that I've been keeping my eye on is Kentucky commit Ben Duncombe out of Lake Travis. He's one to keep an eye on. They got a couple other commits. One is committed to Washington State, another to Nevada that they'll probably get on a visit here before the end of the season. Outside of that, kind of just looking for best available guys, maybe looking to circle back on some guys that maybe they lost or missed out on. That's kind of been their MO here for the 2026 class. And I think that will become probably more apparent as the season goes on. Right now, they're kind of at a standstill because they have all these road games coming up. The homecoming game against UCF will be a very big one, and kind of, I think, is going to be the one where they bring a lot of guys back. A lot of guys that they're in on in the 2026 class will be at that game. It kind of gives Baylor a chance to potentially have an official visit that weekend. That could happen. Usually they wait till the end of the year, but I have a feeling that you might have to do that kind of in the middle of the season if you want to get some of these out-of-state guys in on a visit. Mentioning the 2027 class, I mean, they just got a huge commit with Carice Hoyt out of Lone Star. I mean, they have him and Devontre Kirkland committed. That is a heck of a start to that class. That's 2 4-star prospects locked in now. We saw the damage they did in 2026 with 4-star guys, and they're just kind of keeping that momentum up with these guys. Hoyt, really good prospect, could be a receiver, could be a safety, could even be a linebacker depending on how his body grows, but a really, really good athlete, and one that I know the staff was very excited about. He was a priority for them. So to get him locked in with Devontae Kirkland is a very nice start to the class. And that's kind of where things are at. You also have to remember Baylor's going to keep room for this portal window. So you're going to take a bunch of high school guys, sure, but you're also going to leave some room because Baylor's going to be pretty aggressive in the transfer portal once again to go out and replenish this roster, and then also try to figure out what's going on with 5x5. How many of these guys are going to come back for another year if that rule passes. That's going to add a whole nother layer of context to this and trying to figure out, who gets an extra year, what positions are set, what positions need to be recruited, what positions are we too, are you too loaded at to take other guys. That's going to just add a whole nother facet of this. Recruiting has never been more of a numbers game than it is now. And that's kind of what Baylor's dealing with, along with every school in the country.
All right, I'm still trying to figure out a way to get Sawyer another year. I've been looking at some different things.
Yeah.
I don't know who to sue. I do know some good lawyers. I went to law school, so we could look at that. Do you think some of these kids would enjoy coming to like Baylor Homecoming Parade, maybe see the KOT float, see what the Kappas came up with? Do you think that could make an impact?
I mean, homecoming's always a cool one. I don't know if it'll necessarily be because of the floats, but if Baylor brings out a good environment, I know that'll be great. I mean, they didn't for the K-State game, so having a really good environment, a good home crowd, definitely does wonders. When you're bringing in a bunch of recruits. But in general, I think all the recruits feel just such a great atmosphere when they visit Baylor, and that's been a difference. They love this staff, and that is a key to recruiting. There's a lot of trust built by all these guys. You talk about the coaching staff, but also you look at guys like Aaron Hunt, the GM. He does an amazing job recruiting as well. Ed Paris, Aaron Appleberry. Like, these are really, really good recruiting guys. And then you look at the staff, and they got good recruiters up and down the staff. There's a lot of trust in Dave Aranda. I think that is where there's positivity, and that is where there is momentum. Even if the on-the-field product isn't up to some fan standard, there's still a lot of football left to be played this year. And on the recruiting side, things have definitely been taken care of so far.
All right. And I think you're smart when those fans start asking you, what's the buyout for Dave, to say, hey, I'm not getting into that. And you just hope, like last year, this is the point of the year when it got rolling, when Baylor got on a roll. So why not let it happen this year? I always enjoy you and Colt when I'm driving down, preparing for the pregame show, the Green and Gold pregame show, I listen to y'all's last thing of the week because you talk, about the health of the team. And so y'all do a great job on that. All your Sick'em 365, and you got stories. I laugh when the fans are like, why don't y'all do this or something? You're very nice to them. But if you're like, are the 7 or 8 features I do not enough?
I know. We try to cover it all, but I also know that it's tough. It's tough. Yeah. And some people don't have an hour to listen to a podcast. So I get it.
Yeah. And, our next one, we'll have more time to react to the huge Baylor exhibition that they had the other day over Grand Canyon. Yeah. But I sit by Levi at all the games, and I've always liked him and loved his baseball coverage. So good to have him on football. And then the young guy to his left seems like a fun guy. And I think that's a good feature when you guys take all what everybody else is saying and all, and kind of do a compilation kind of thing. And so I got to meet him, but
are you talking about Will?
I think that's Will. Yeah. Down there. He's sitting next to,
he does a great job. And he actually had a really good piece on Quinn Murphy this week for anybody that's looking around, trying to figure out, what's going on with the Baylor recruiting guys. I mean, he was just, he had a great article on Quinn. I've gotten to know Quinn really well. Great kid, great, just ambassador for Baylor recruiting right now. And it's just, again, momentum is absolutely there on the recruiting side. And Quinn Murphy is kind of the leader behind that 2026 class. So I encourage anyone to check that out. Will Bowles did a great job on that article on him.
All right. Yeah. And, but you Scotty Swingler did not appear at any point during our discussion, Grayson, and one mention of Quinn Murphy. I mean, he just goes crazy. He's excited. So he'll get right to that Will Bowles story. But
Quinn Murphy Stan. I already retweeted Will's story and told him he did an excellent job.
Yeah, he really did. He knocked it out of the park, and he hasn't done a ton of articles yet. So it was great to see. He was texting me a little bit about it and asked me if he needed any more questions. I'm like, dude, you got this. You got this.
Crushed
he
it.
Killed it.
He absolutely crushed it.
All right. See, that's the way to make sure Scotty's paying attention. Just one mention of any quarterback recruit, we'll bring him in. Hey, Grayson, thank you. We'll do more of this, and love. Ashley's a great friend, and so we've been talking about stuff for a long time, and so it's really fun to be able to hang out and get to visit with you guys again. So thanks for doing this.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on anytime.
You bet. The man from Scotland, he's back. Pitlochry. I can't believe that, Scotty. That's crazy. That's where I stayed. I went to the British Open in 2000 with my dad, and we stayed in Pitlochry. And it's just a little tiny village town in Scotland. Nobody would know about Pitlochry, and that's where the Grundhoefers. That's where they were hanging out. That's where his brother-in-law was doing his thing. So very, very exciting stuff, and good information there on a lot of